This semester, we've been following food we eat through the body. We began with the digestive system, which physically and chemically breaks down food into smaller particles we can absorb. These nutrients move through the cell membrane of the small intestine into capillaries. Your blood takes these nutrients around the body. Now we'll look at what happens to one specific nutrient, your favorite and mine, gets back to the cells themselves. Recall that sugar is a carbohydrate and is the main source of energy in our body. The process of breaking down sugar from food, whether it happens in animals that break down sugar from the food they eat, or whether it happens in plants which break down the sugar they make from photosynthesis, is called cell respiration. So energy from the breakdown of food through the process of cell respiration replenishes the supply of ATP. ATP is the molecule our bodies use directly for energy. In order to get energy, humans and other animals eat their food. If the food we eat contains glucose, we break down that glucose, and if it doesn't, our body can produce glucose using the food we eat. So whether you eat sugar like a fat kid on Halloween, or you eat as healthy as a horse, your body will break down glucose to get energy. However, one problem, your body can't use glucose directly. Why not, you might ask? Glucose stores a lot of energy. In fact, 1 gram of glucose, there's enough energy stored to raise 9 kilograms of water 1 degree Celsius. That might not sound like a lot, but 9 kilograms is almost 20 pounds. So to break down glucose would mean that your body would release all of this energy at one time. Most of it would end up getting wasted. Imagine if you used a stick of dynamite to open your soda can. The can would open, but you would waste most of the energy in that stick of dynamite. Most of the energy that was lost would result in heat being given off, and you would need a lot more glucose. People with high metabolisms are actually breaking down glucose inefficiently because they need more glucose than most people, and they're generally warm, meaning they produce a lot of heat in the process. The process of breaking down glucose has 3 steps that begin with a step called glycolysis. If oxygen is present, the glucose can be more efficiently broken down, and if it's not present, a different pathway is followed, which creates much less energy. When your body needs energy, instead of using the glucose molecule directly, it will use ATP. ATP comes from breaking down sugar. This is what the whole process of respiration is about. Break down sugar, produce ATP as a product. So what exactly is ATP? Well, it stands for adenosine triphosphate. It has 3 parts: adenine, a sugar called ribose, and 3 phosphate groups. Most of the energy is stored in these phosphate groups. When a phosphate breaks off, energy is released. And when a phosphate gets added, energy gets stored. ATP gets used almost immediately to do something useful in your cells. It's used for things like moving muscles, getting chemical reactions started, and moving things across the cell membrane. Every time your nerve fires, when you experience something via your 5 senses, or you have a thought, or your body sends signals that you're not even aware of, like to make more digestive juices, active transport is used. And all of these things need ATP. So ATP is used, and as it is broken down, a phosphate is broken off, and that produces ADP plus a phosphate group. In the process of cell respiration, ADP and the phosphate group are joined back together to create more ATP. Cellular respiration is the process by which organisms break down glucose and other food molecules in the presence of oxygen in order to produce energy the cell can use efficiently. You'll notice the steps of cell respiration are very similar to photosynthesis, but happen backwards. The first stage of cell respiration, which takes place in the cytoplasm, is called glycolysis. The products of glycolysis then move into the mitochondria, where they're broken down during the Krebs cycle. The Krebs cycle attaches electrons to 2 different electron carriers. The electrons move down the electron transport chain to produce energy. Ultimately, the electrons moving down the electron transport chain are attached to oxygen in order to produce water. The overall equation for cell respiration is just photosynthesis backwards. The products of photosynthesis are the reactants in cell respiration. And the reactants of cell respiration are the products of photosynthesis. So in animals that don't make their own food, where do all these things come from? Glucose, or C6H12O6, comes directly from your bloodstream if you just had something to eat. Or if you haven't just eaten, glucose comes from your liver, where it's been stored as glycogen, which you'll remember is a polymer of glucose. Oxygen comes from the air that we breathe. Oxygen moves into our lungs and then into our blood. When oxygen is present, aerobic respiration takes place. Sometimes oxygen isn't available though, like if you're exercising really hard. At the end of cell respiration, carbon dioxide is breathed out, as well as water. Put a mirror next to your mouth when you breathe, and you'll see small water droplets condense onto the mirror, making fog. The energy produced in this process is used to do cellular work. So again, that energy is ATP. So let's take a look at the process again. There are 3 stages. First of all, glucose is broken down in the process of glycolysis. Essentially, it's just broken in half. The product of glycolysis moves into the Krebs cycle, where the glucose is broken down even further. This is where carbon dioxide is produced. Electrons are attached to electron carriers, which then move to the electron transport chain. The electron transport chain takes in oxygen and produces water. It also uses the energy from those electrons to produce high-energy ATP. So now that you're done, don't forget to go back and take the quiz. So here are the questions for the quiz. You will find this on Edline, as you always do, in the assignments folder, and it's called Cell Respiration.